Okay. So I will start by telling my story, and I'll just let you know, first of all, that I actually ended up writing it as a book that's available on an audiobook also. So I'm not going to give you the whole story because that's awful and it would take a long time. It took 8 hours to read the book when we did an audiobook recording. So but it's available. So it's called A Promise of Hope, and it was published in 2007 by HarperCollins, and it's available all over the world and on Audible for audiobook also. So just so that you know, that's available. So in a nutshell, though, I was raised by a mom who was eventually diagnosed with bipolar. She had a very traumatic childhood, and in turn, I did also. And as a result, I experienced feelings about suicide even as a 10-year-old. I think that was the first time that I recall really grappling with that topic. And it turned out that I didn't commit suicide, obviously, I'm still here, but my mom did when I was 21. And I was already well on my way to becoming quite like my mom. So I had my first child when I was 20 or 19, 20. And then I just promptly became super sick. And by the time he was 3 years old, I wasn't allowed to be alone with him. And my marriage was in trouble. And I had tried 13 medications and multiple hospitalizations, and I just wasn't getting any better. And I tried everything because after my mom died, I just decided that I would have to be the very best medical patient that I possibly could be to avoid her fate. And actually at her funeral, I was informed that my grandfather had also committed suicide. We'd always been told that it was a heart attack, but in fact, he'd used his psychiatric medications to take his own life. So this was a problem that was running in my family, in my mom's side of the family. I was obviously next in line, and I was super, super concerned about that. And so was my dad. So I'm going to send a text to my daughters in the other room because I have a feeling that you can probably hear them. Can you hear them? I think you can't hear them. Okay, I can. If it gets loud, please let me know. They're home from college, so it's loud. So anyway, my dad and I struggled. He had 8 kids left at home. I was already married off, but he had a lot of children, and I went and tried to help him, but more than anything, he was babysitting me on and off. I wasn't allowed to be alone. After one hospitalization, my husband had to figure out how to have 24-hour adult supervision for me. And then when he wasn't able to do that, they were actually looking at a long-term care facility for me in Canada, because I couldn't be left alone and it wasn't safe for me to be with my son. So that was sort of a rock bottom. And on the last hospitalization, I came out on a 5-drug cocktail. So imagine me curled up in a rocking chair and falling out on my face and drooling all over the floor and having to have my mother-in-law pick me up and put me back and, pat me on the head. I was not living. It was not functional on any level. And then my dad had a really interesting conversation with a gentleman. They were standing in a church hallway. They were literally talking about the building. They weren't even talking about religious things or anything faithful or anything. They were talking about replacing the carpet in the church building. And my dad had a feeling that he needed to tell this guy all of the painful experiences that he was going through with the loss of his father-in-law, and then years later, the loss of his wife, and then my diagnosis and not responding well, and then also my brother, who was diagnosed with bipolar and who was not responding well. And he was a whole different kind of manic. He was incredibly violent. And this gentleman told my dad that he thought my brother sounded like a pig with ear and tail biting syndrome, which is a disease in swine that they have learned can be largely mitigated with nutrition, where they go from being very grumpy and chewing on each other and killing each other in the pig pen to being calm and healthy, and actually with proper supplementation, having nearly twice as many piglets and maintaining healthier everything. So farmers understood in Canada back in 1995 all the things that my dad needed to know about saving me and my brother. And that's ultimately what he did. So it's a very strange story. When it was all through the press in Canada, and there was actually some press, Fox News did a story on it in the United States after the first research was published. And as it became a more popular story, the most accurate news story I ever saw was published in the Inquirer. And you know that the magazine, that like rag that you buy at the grocery store, inquiring minds want to know. And they just tell the craziest stories. They told our story in the most accurate terms I've ever seen in print. I don't think anybody else was prepared to put their reputation on the line to actually tell the truth, but it was a very strange story and they told it accurately. And I thought that was cool. So we've had a lot of press over the years. If you Google my name and spell it correctly, or you Google my dad, you will see things said that are good about us, things said that are bad about us, everything in between, and loads of press about it. But in the end, what happened is that after proving that it worked for several thousand people and collecting a lot of data that was voluntarily collected, my dad was able to get researchers to take a look at it and just on their own be interested. So there was a government grant that was given to the University of Calgary Behavioral Research Science, and they conducted the first study. And then after that, it was duplicated in multiple universities the world over. There are up to, I think, 36 studies or publishings about the supplement in medical journals. And it has been nearly 25 years now. In January, it will be 25 years. So we've gone through using it as a cobbled together formula with like powders and liquids and pills and things that were just commercially available, where they tried to get it all formulated correctly and get everything into the correct ratios. And then had to get an all-in-one product built because in order to get a placebo-controlled study, you have to have like one thing. It can't just be 5 things and then the placebo would be one thing. So they had to get it to look like one thing. And that's when they got it into capsule form and went from about 100 ingredients down to between 30 and 40 ingredients. And so we had capsules. And at the time, the technology, even though the ratios between minerals had been perfected and they really figured out over a series of several years, through trial and error with people like me who are highly sensitive, they figured out what the ratios needed to be to get it to really work and just to have people feel calmer, clearer headed, just capable of making better choices, taking out the rage and the impulsivity and just kind of taking everybody down a few notches. So they had the ratio correct, but the technology was still really lacking. So to get the results that I needed, I would have to take 32 capsules every day. So, like those regular veggie caps, I was doing 32 of those a day. And that was really awful and hard to do. I did it but I still did it because the results were so much better than any medication or 5-drug cocktail that I'd had. So it was still worth it. I would still be doing it today if I had to, but luckily I don't. They got a new technology for absorption and improved the way that the minerals were processed. And you know that it's really hard to digest a rock. Like if you were to go out and chew calcium like out of a mountain or iron off of a railroad track, you're not really going to digest it. It's going to go right through you. It doesn't go into your blood and nourish your brain. It just goes through you. Like if your baby eats a penny, you find the whole penny later. They don't digest the penny. There's no copper that gets absorbed from that, right? So that's essentially what we were trying to do. And that's why taking a huge amount to get that tiny amount that your body actually needs, I'd have to just take massive doses of it. So the new technology allowed it to get down to 24 capsules a day, and then 15, and then somewhere between 8 and 4. And then a couple of years ago, my dad had me test a nice little powder. And it didn't taste very good at the time. They've since improved it. But ultimately, it turned into this, and it's called Lightning. And I know it looks really gimmicky and it's like sweet and it's kind of like a pixie stick. So it's sort of cute. So you might not think that it's really serious, but it's incredibly powerful. It's potent. And what they've done is they've taken what used to be in the capsules, and we still have the capsules and they're still very good. Some people use them at 4 or 8 and they do really well. I still choose to use capsules sometimes because I love the grounded feeling that I get from them as I have to digest the mineral. There's something different about it for me. But the Lightning has been ground so fine that if you take a look at the document that the company just put out about it in terms of particle size, you can hardly see the particle on the page, like when they print out the size of this particle in comparison with the capsule particles. So it's very, very fine. And this you can hold in your mouth until all of the granules have dissolved. So about a minute, and you start to feel this kind of dry feeling on the inside of your cheeks and under your tongue. And that is super, super fine mineral being absorbed. And so it goes in sublingually. And as a result, the results that we used to get from people taking capsules, where we would say, give it like a week and then you'll start to feel it. People will say what it used to take a week takes a day or 2 days. And what used to take 3 months takes a couple of weeks. And so there's a cumulative effect of having the nutritional needs met as the brain is fed consistently and as you get that all in there. But the results that we get by adding Lightning to the capsule regimen is just phenomenal. It is incredible. So usually what I recommend for people is that they take a couple of capsules, maybe with their breakfast, and then add some Lightning in the afternoon. So they're kind of getting both ways of getting the mineral into them. And it is just an incredible life changer for a lot of people. Jessica, did I tell you about Sarah's story?
No.
Sarah Brickle. Okay, Sarah Brickle called me. So Sarah has gone on publicly on my page, and she's talked about her experience for 8 years, right? She's been using the formula for herself. She got better. She went on, and I'm not saying anything here that she hasn't said in public in a recording on my page. So she got better and she finished her education, and then as a psychologist has opened several clinics, right? So she helps kids in clinics. And she told me a story about a young girl who was they figured an average of 7 absolutely flat out awful panic attacks. So physical, like terrible, violent panic attacks every day. And had been doing this for quite some time, and it was trauma related. There was a whole bunch of like circumstantial stuff that had been involved. They had tried her on a couple of medications and only been able to help her going from on the scale that they rated on, like from a 3.2 to a 2.8. So a change with meds, but really not enough to say that she felt better. And Sarah handed her mother a handful of Lightning sticks. And the mom called back a couple of days later and said, "It's over. The panic has stopped."
Wow.
She'd actually gone a whole day without any panic. Which is, for a little kid who doesn't know what they're taking and has no expectation, placebo is really not something that happens with small children when they don't even know. I mean, she would have thought she was getting a candy stick. So
Right.
I think it's amazing, but I'm excited to hear her story as it develops, just like thousands of other people's stories have developed over the last 25 years. Pretty fantastic. So.
Well, that's, I'm so glad that you shared that. I had a similar experience last weekend with panic attacks and really PTSD. We had gone off, and you didn't get to hear this yet. We went, I told Misty this story today. We drove up through the mountains, but when I was 14, we went off a cliff and off the mountain cliff, and we went down about 70 feet. We started rolling and the car hit, it rolled onto its side, it hit a tree and it stopped.
You
So
did?
yes, I was in the back seat of
Oh.
with this major, big, huge, old fashioned, this old station wagons made of steel, thank God, or we would have been crushed. And the tow truck, because the car flipped on its side, it like started to roll and it hit its side. So like part of the top was smashed, but none of the tires were smashed. So the tow truck came, pulled the car out, and it was still drivable. And the boys I was with, they still wanted to go skiing, but I was like, I want my mom. And had really injured my back as well with muscles, was started to have muscle spasms and all that. Anyway, last weekend before last, we went up to the mountains, and I have not been able to go up a mountain since then without like complete fear of like anxiety. I would say it's very anxiety ridden, and I can't look over the side. Well, we went up there, and I looked over the side, and I wasn't scared. I didn't have a panic attack. I didn't tell my husband, slow down, slow down, slow down, to where he's going about 20, because I won't let him go any faster. So, and I looked down and it was so pretty down there. And I was like, wow. So this is what it's looked like down there all the time. I mean, I can look down there, but I'm like, it's so far. And so I totally think that is, and you know what? It might be a silly or a minor thing, but it's quality of life. And that was a huge difference in my life, not alone, let alone all the other wonderful things that I have been experiencing from the lightning in this short period of time. I like what you were saying, Adam, about on the paper where you have the big 25 microns or something, and then a little bit smaller. And then I was like, did they forget to put it on the page? And then
you see the arrow and the name, but you can't see the point.
It's a little teeny tiny little dot, which is interesting because Misty and I were talking earlier today, and she's a teacher, so she's very smart, and she's very she doesn't miss a beat, but she was looking on the ingredients and noticed that the dosages are so small, and then it says USDA, USRDA recommended amount, and it's this little bit, because the RDA, how are they going to put it into, have you seen that, Autumn? Of course you have. It's like a little teeny little bit.
Yeah, it's amazing because we've been able to get the product into countries where the capsules have been banned because the dose was too high, according to what they assume you need. And I mean, there's some like global regulatory bodies that have decided what is necessary and what shouldn't happen. And I think a lot of that is, anyway, I have a lot of opinions about that, because when you actually look at safety studies, you are hard pressed to get too much of any of that kind of stuff. But it's interesting to me, like, it's not how much you take that really matters. It's actually how much you absorb. So in a product where it's like super, super absorbable and you're getting it into your bloodstream, you actually don't need more than that. And when they've set the RDA, they've set it based on archaic technologies and And dosages based on how much calcium do you need to get your blood level to raise to this amount, right? To be at the right blood level. Well, it doesn't, if you're digesting calcium and the rocks are this big on the paper, right? Like on the visual, that's a whole different dosage than what you need if you're getting it in a submicron size that is actually absorbable through your tissues. So it's not even comparing apples to apples anymore. So yeah, super safe and super low doses, but the doses don't really actually apply much to the RDA because they're basing the RDA doses on stuff that isn't even absorbable. And I'm sure that we've all heard those studies that have come out of Great Britain where they say that over-the-counter supplements really do no good.
Yeah.
They did some studies on how effective they are, and they essentially are not.
Yeah.
They're largely not effective. And that has everything to do with technology.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that our bodies require nutrition or that every single process for the production of proper hormones and neurotransmitters requires ingredients that are micronutrient ingredients that you see in Empower Plus. That's all true, but taking an over-the-counter, licking iron off the railroad or chewing on chalk is not going to actually change what's going on in your body. So you have to, if you want to supplement, you have to supplement with something your body can recognize and actually absorb.
Right. And thinking about absorbability too, we were talking earlier about gastric bypasses too, and how, or people who don't like to swallow pills. And this is such a simple way to be able to get our micronutrients, our minerals and our vitamins and our aminos that we need, and they're essential to life. And they're essential because that's what they are, essential to us being alive. Without them, we'd be dead. But we walk around, and I love, Autumn, how you explained that way back when you were being interviewed for your book about really changing the face of mental health and the causes of mental health issues.
Yeah, I think it is really important. One of the best things I think that has come out of this discovery is recognizing the root cause of some forms of mental illness. Yeah. So I realize there are also about 15% of people in the research concerning the supplement that don't respond. So there are different reasons to come to the conclusion of like mentally ill behavior. I get that. So this is not putting everybody who's been called bipolar or everyone who's been called depressed or anxious into the same box. But certainly there are many ways that we can come to nutritional deficiency that will ultimately lead to a change in our behavior. And that's been proven in the animal industry. It's absolutely been proven in the people industry also. And the way to know if your mood problems or problems with mental clarity or impulsivity or rage or whatever the deal is, to know if it's associated with nutritional deficiency, the way to find out is to take absorbable, balanced nutrition and see if it actually changes how you feel, right? So yeah, the thing with gastric bypass for me, it's not one that I talk about often, but it is one of the factors in my mother's death. And about 7 years into my recovery, I started doing a lot of studying about all the things that were contributors to my mom's suicide. And I looked at the stats on suicide rate post gastric bypass, and she'd had a gastric bypass surgery, and a couple of years in, was dead. And when you look at the studies about depression and suicidality and gastric bypass, they talk a lot about assuming that people are disappointed with the results or thinking that somehow losing weight was going to solve all their life problems. That's probably why they're depressed. But I don't think so. I think that when we disturb our ability to absorb nutrition normally, or we are required to change our diet so dramatically to avoid blockage, we find ourselves increasing the potential for nutrient deficiency. So we know for sure that those, anytime that we remove a section of the digestive system or compromise the ability to absorb nutrition normally, that's going to create over time an increase for the possibility of deficiency. And we also know that certain micronutrient deficiencies will lead to changes in the way that we feel or the way that we filter information. And so it affects our brains. Ultimately, at the end of the day, all of these things affect our brains. And I think that was absolutely one of the factors for my mom. There were a lot of compounding factors for her. Hysterectomy was another one of them. And a major knee injury that in Canada just took a long time to even get an MRI and figure it out, and on the waiting list for a year and a half for the surgery, just over a simple knee injury. But, so pain meds, a lot of pain meds, that also would have been a factor. And then absolutely she was diagnosable and had been sick for many years. And so just like one compounding factor after another until finally, I think it just broke her. And so I'm not saying that, there aren't other factors to suicide related to something like gastric bypass, but it certainly is one of the factors in changing the way that we feel over time.
Right.
So, and the last, this morning I did a chat with a group of people. We actually recorded it and put a section of it, just a small part, 20 minutes of it is actually posted on my Feel Better site. And we were talking about relapse. There was a young man on there who had been well and unmedicated for about a year, and he had some family stuff. They had a brand new baby. He was sleepless for a while. There were some major stresses, some stuff happened, and he suddenly became symptomatic again. And we talked about how that didn't happen overnight, but it was probably a cumulative effect of different stressors that were affecting him, a major change in diet, some circumstantial things that ultimately eventually got him to the point where one day he flipped, and it was enough to just tip him back into some symptoms. So the way that he's responded to that is increasing his supplement and making sure that he is absolutely religious about getting his sleep, realizing that without sleep and missing doses, like he wasn't missing all his doses, but he'd become a little lax about taking his supplement regularly, just because he was busy. And so he was missing a dose here, missing a dose there, and on and on. And there's a cumulative effect that happens. So the benefit that he was experiencing last year suddenly seemed like it ended in a day, but it didn't. There was it was a process. He slowly got himself there. And that's no different than a factor like a gastric bypass, where you don't suddenly, boom, you're suddenly incredibly nutrient deficient. There'd be a cumulative effect with having that slightly reduced ability to absorb nutrition.
Yeah. And we just know that what our guts, absorbing, and not just gastric bypass. Gastric bypass is one of those things where you may have, and I have another dear friend who she had gastric bypass, and then they had to go in and she had issues and had to have her stomach completely removed. So she's not getting any absorption at all. And she absolutely loves the sticks because she's finally getting the absorption, the nutrients that she needs. It's such a simple thing that you would think, how come why don't we all know this? And how come the whole world isn't on sticks?
Well, they probably should be, but this is really new too. The idea that mineral can be absorbed sublingually is actually super new and incredibly unique. It's not something that anybody else has, and certainly not in the correct ratios. So, I mean, just a year ago, my own daughter was struggling terribly, and she had a cumulative effect. She's got Crohn's. Earlier in her teens, they thought that she had ulcerative colitis, and there was no indication of Crohn's. And so when she got super, super sick, and I mean, it was a long struggle. This wasn't a decision that we took lightly, but to save her life, and to what we thought would end the disease process for her, we actually had her entire colon removed. It was just destroyed. So her ability to absorb liquid back out of her digested food in the colon, that's where the liquid is absorbed, and that's where the majority of mineral is reabsorbed into the system. That's why if you have diarrhea, eventually you'll start having some other issues because your electrolytes are off, because you're not reabsorbing those minerals and salts back out of the water from your digested food, right? To turn it into a solid stool. So now, in the absence of a colon, she had a constant diarrhea, right? Because it just goes out into a stoma, out into a bag. So over time, she was becoming incredibly nutrient deficient. She'd had diarrhea for many years, and then her colon is removed, and now she's got this permanent situation. So, and then of course, food goes flying through faster because there's nothing to slow it, and the motility is fast and all of that. So we were giving her the capsules, and a lot of them, and doing everything that we could in our power to get enough supplements into her. Her doctor said she has to be supplemented. She's going to be osteoporotic in her 20s. She's going to be prone to spontaneous bone breaks. Like, they knew that she was going to break down, shortened life expectancy, all of that stuff. And they expected her to be a psychiatric patient in short order. That's just par for the course with somebody with her disease history. And then, of course, she was diagnosed with Crohn's after the first surgery. So we know that her whole digestive system was affected. And I mean, we were just at our wits' end. What were we going to do for this kid? Then the lightning came out, and we started giving that to her. On the very first dose, she said it lit her brain up. She felt it. She was so deficient that the very first time she got that nutrition actually into her bloodstream, it was such a relief to her. And it's really interesting to hear her talk about it, because she was literally in the middle of writing an essay, and she'd been struggling for many hours, trying to be a college student, hardly able to take more than one course at a time, and really struggling trying to write this essay. My husband walked in with these samples, gave her a lightning stick, and 20 minutes later, she was like, "What was that?" Because she felt it. She was so deficient that it was such a relief. So she doesn't take capsules because they do her no good, because her digestive system is so compromised. But she will take, 4 or 5 lightning sticks a day in order to get into her what she's simply never going to get out of her food. No matter what she eats or how healthy she eats, it passes through her system in 25 minutes or less. She just doesn't have time to break it down. So she really needs to find another way to get that nutrition straight into her brain the way she needs it. It's so cool. It's such amazing technology.
And thank God for that, because it's really hard to see our kids struggling, and you try and help. And and when you said 20 minutes and the light went on, that's exactly how I felt. I know I was driving, and I'd taken a stick at the house, and I was driving, and it was 20 minutes later, and it felt like somebody did that. They just turned the light on, and things were crisp and clear, and like it hasn't stopped since then. And I want to share them with everybody, and I know that I can't share them with everybody because I'm only one person, but I know that through our through friends and family and people that I meet, and it seems like everybody is having an issue of some sort. Not these big mental health like if we're going to have to, call it something. But just COVID-19, we'll just call it the COVID-19 blues. And
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I don't know anybody who hasn't been affected by, I mean, we've got Aussies on here that had a whole six cases in Western Australia, compared to our, how many today did we have? 10,000 or 12,000 or
Oh, it's sweeping
120,000?
my hometown right now. There's a lot of people that are sick, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Idaho's kind of last to the party, I think, and we're suddenly really feeling it. Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah.
we've been feeling it here in California for quite some time, and we did do the shut down and stay in our homes, and like there was nobody on the streets at all. It was a really strange thing back in March and April, and then we kind of got out of the doghouse and we were doing better, but it's still affecting our jobs, our schools, our
Yeah.
children. We know, all you have to do is turn on the news and see what they're talking about people who've been in isolation and the depression
Mhm.
and things like that. And so I am, I want to be able to pass those little sticks out to whoever I can. And I've got some going to Australia and some going to the North Carolina and some more going to North Carolina, and shipping them out there because I want people to feel better.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that people struggle with most is the way that it's being marketed now. And the fact that lightning is only available through Renova. So even though the capsules are still available through our family company in Canada, and there's some rules about that were actually set up in court when it was determined that it was a life-saving mechanism. One arm of government was trying to shut down my dad's support center and telling him not to sell it anymore. And then it went to court. And of course, the judge and the Mental Health Association in Canada came forward and said, no, this is life-saving and preserving for some people. And so he actually has to stay in business in Canada. He's not allowed to stop, which is interesting. But it was not the most effective way to reach the planet. And he wanted to he was hoping at some point that it would just be understood as good medicine and taken into the doctor's offices and allowed to be used, properly, right? Like as a first go-to before you put a child on a harsh medication, why not try nutrition that it can actually be usable and absorbable? And since that didn't work out, at that point, somebody talked him into using network marketing. I am so grateful that that happened. We are reaching more people now than I ever imagined possible. And we're really just starting. It's super, super new. This company has only been around for just over a year. And I see the potential as people like Jessica come in, as people like Shirley and Maribel, all of these people that are coming in, Colette, from different places in the world, and realizing like, oh, this is something that could help several people. If everybody that was benefiting from it helped 10 people, and then they did, it would just go like wildfire. And this is the only way that we have that kind of potential. When my dad realized that from our family company in Canada, where we had never spent any money on advertising and just were really bad at it, didn't know what we were doing, and really hoping that the research would just, people would just realize that this is a great discovery and then just like do it through the medical system. When we realized that the only growth that we had ever seen in the 100,000 people that we'd been able to help at that point was through word of mouth, he started to understand the power of word of mouth and the fact that every person who struggles with mental health knows someone else who does also. Or basically every person who's ever had a brain injury or has a brain at all that needs to be fed is attached to someone else who also has those same needs, right? And so as one person begins to feel better and then they're willing to talk about it, might as well reward them for doing so and keep those advertising dollars going to the people who are talking and educating each other. So I'm really grateful that Renova is formed. And my dad's one of the owners of the company, which is great because we know that the formulation is protected and that access is sincere, that it really is about getting the right product into people's hands. It's pretty good.
I love that. And Autumn, I'm really thankful that Renova did decide to go this route, because otherwise I wouldn't know about it. And it has changed. And, you know, I mean, in this small group, everybody knows, you know, about our journey that we've been on with our family and my son and his mental health issues. And you don't have to have these severe mental health issues to have a brain that needs to be fed. But I can only know that what our family experienced, and we lived in a lot of crisis mode because of the rapid cycling that was taking place, and the hospitalizations. And it's a terrible thing to have to leave your kid in a psych ward in a lockdown unit because you can't control them and they can't control themselves. And so I've got, you know, I've seen so many results with my friends and my own family, and my son I will be able to one of these days, and I can't wait, because I'm thinking he's 29 years old and there's not a day that he has had his brain fed in 29 years. Can you imagine what he is going to he's going to feel really good.
Yeah, he is. Oh, I'm so excited for you.
And also this industry of network marketing needed some good folks in here. We needed to change this industry and know that there are people who truly care about people. And I love that, Autumn, when we talk about your father was trying to save your life and your brother's life, and formulated this thing and was trying to get it approved, as you know, for the whole world to be able to be approved like what the FDA or Health Canada approved. And they were like, no, we only approve drugs and you can only have a drug. So sorry, that's not going to happen. So what was your dad going to do? Say, forget it, I just give up? No. And putting it on a shelf, can you imagine? Nobody would have known there's such a phenomenal story, and between the research that just blows me away, because I've read all of the research, to testimonials, to the longevity of 25 years of people being better. And that story, none of that, if it was sitting on the shelf, unless you had a little video that was playing the story, would anybody really know what this is? And it's like the best kept secret, and I don't want it to be a secret.
I agree. And no, they wouldn't. My dad was not a businessman. He wasn't. He was none of that. He wasn't a formulator. He was a power engineer with 8 kids and a wife who had committed suicide. And well, he had 10 kids, but 8 at home. He was totally in survival mode. The only thing he was trying to do was just to save his own family. When he realized that he had something, and then the neighbor lady started using it, and the schizophrenic lady down the street who hadn't been out of her house in 20 years started using it, and then the ADHD kid, and then mom came over crying, oh my goodness, Johnny's back, and everybody's feeling better. It was such a spontaneous and such a weird kind of groundswell. Like it wasn't intentional, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was not a plan, and it wasn't intentional. And then he just got so curious. My dad's a genius. He's got a really weird brain. Like the way that he thinks through information just blows my mind. And I've got a brother that's just like him. And he's the one that actually came up with the lightning technology. He spent a couple of years in a garage, on some ridiculously expensive machine, working it out, and then moves the whole thing to a laboratory and figures this thing out. Like they're interesting people. And I think that they were just like meant for this, but it was not deliberate. And so I think that innocently, my dad really actually believed somehow that he could make a discovery in southern Alberta, in Canada, in a small farming town, and that if it was proven in research, that of course, you know, the government of Canada would run with it, because why wouldn't you want the people who are struggling with all of those symptoms and all that pain to feel better? Why wouldn't you want that? And they don't. I guess it's I was you got to read my book to get the whole story, but I was standing outside the Parliament building on Parliament Hill with a red umbrella, 6 months pregnant, in front of a camera, and a sweet old man came down. He was one of the lawmakers in Canada, and he gave me a big hug, and he said in my ear, "I'm sorry, but it's not who's right. It's about who has the money, and you don't have it, honey." And he was just trying to give me a hint, like, you can fight the good fight, but you're not going to get anywhere. And I mean, we got a little bit. We got the freedom to choose a treatment that worked for us in Canada, and a judge to say that we weren't allowed to stop. So that's as good as it gets. It actually didn't even change the law. The law still says that if a bipolar person is using something as a treatment, that treatment is a drug. So it doesn't matter what it actually is. If it's being used for somebody with bipolar, you know, it's just, it's so silly.
Yeah, it's like that in America too. I know that I worked for I took a break from my oncology research for a little bit and did traumatic brain injury research, and I worked for the Defense and Veterans Brain Injury Center, and we were seeing all of the service members coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan with these traumatic brain injuries. And we were a congressionally funded program, and they went in, and when they went in to ask for funding, and there was all these people there, and they're like, wow, we sure did draw a crowd today. They went in, and they got a little bit of money, and they came out. The crowd had grown bigger. Elizabeth Taylor was going to Congress that day to ask for AIDS funding. So all of the people there with her, and that was when she got like $1 billion or something, and the DBIC got this little teeny, like a couple few $1,000s or something. And they said, yeah, that's it right there. It's who you know, who's the loudest,
how it's going to look on a camera.
But again, we know that this industry of direct sales, word of mouth advertising, that things can grow word of mouth. And especially in today's era where we're all stuck in our homes. I wouldn't say stuck, because I like my home, where we're all living in our homes so nicely. But we can Zoom. And Zooming is a great way to be able to connect with others. And we still have our mail to be able to ship things out, and people are buying everything online these days. So I think it couldn't be a better time where these sticks have really been the silver lining of COVID-19 for me and my family.
I think that's true. Honestly, we've never seen the ability, like the leveling of the playing field. I don't have to depend on a national television network to tell my story accurately. I can get online and say it myself. And as many people as want to repeat it can share it with a click of a button. It is magical. And the fact that Zoom has become a thing this year, what a miracle that is. I mean, look what we're doing. I think I've just decided that I really want to post this one. So I'm going to turn around and post this one, because it's been you and I talking, not sharing anybody else's personal stuff. So we're going to be able to post it. But that is the miraculous thing. And we have the ability to share worldwide with a level playing field. So I think it's great. I don't know about you, but I spend more time on social media than I do on major news networks now. And it didn't used to be that way.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's when we're doing something positive and we're helping others, there's a joy that comes with that, and a thankfulness that comes, especially when we made it through the other side. I watch news outlets, but I can't watch too much of it because I can get really depressed, and I have to be careful of where I'm spending my time and what kind of thoughts I'm putting into my head. Life is stressful, and I know we've talked about stressors so much, and like everybody, like we've talked about bipolar, ADHD, all of these diagnoses, but stress, capital STRESS, that we all have experienced, and really just modern mankind and the amount of stress we have and what that does to our brain.
Mhm. It's huge. It is absolutely huge. When you look at, we've got this little chart that Dana and I have been teaching for the last 20 years. We started a support program up in Canada. We were talking to people about their experiences and realizing how much circumstantial stress has to do with the ultimate mental health and the way that they feel about things. And then having them respond to a nutritional supplement to resolve something that started out as circumstantial. It doesn't make a lot of sense up front, but when you realize how much physical and circumstantial stress actually affects the gut and the way that we digest, it's that whole fight or flight. Fight or flight is a really powerful evolutionary thing that we developed in order to protect ourselves from an attacker. But the attack would only be like a little period of time, right? Where you're not feeling safe. And so, like if you're running away from a bear, it makes sense to stop digestion and start running, put the power where it needs to be and go, right? But in our society, with the level of stress and the schedules that we keep and the kind of stress that we're experiencing now, circumstantial things can put us into a state of fight or flight for quite an extended period of time, or over and over and over again. And when that happens, that's not natural. We're not built for that. So our bodies, in shutting down nutrition, in shutting down digestion and inhibiting the absorption of nutrition, can get into a state of deficiency. So when I post this video on Feel Better, I'm going to also post in the comments, I'm going to post that cycle. And I would just challenge everybody who sees this to go and take a look at the cycle and see where you entered. So I think I entered at birth. My mom was compromised. She was a very young mom. She'd already had a baby 11 months before I was born, and she wasn't eating well. She was growing up in the era of Twiggy, and she really wanted to be ultra thin. And so she wasn't eating well. And as a result, I don't think she had a whole lot to offer her second baby born to her in a year. And so I came out super sickly and super deficient, and I was a screamer and a miserable colicky baby right from the get-go. And I've not been well my whole life. I've just always had that underground thing. When I got onto the supplement and we got enough of it into me to start making a real difference, I was healthier than I had ever been in my entire life. And it was just a miracle for me. I hadn't ever felt good in my whole life, you know? So that's where I entered that cycle. But other people will enter at a circumstantial situation or something traumatic that puts them into that state of fight or flight. And then ultimately they come around to becoming deficient, where they've had chronic gut problems or issues that have just led them into a deficiency that makes them aggravated and agitated, impulsive, ragey, depressed, whatever their deal is. But then they become diagnosable. And then there's all sorts of trauma that comes because there's behaviors and habits. And anyway, I'm talking you through the cycle without you seeing it, but go ahead and check it out in comments. And then I would love people to let me know where they think they entered that cycle, because it's true for everyone. If you're having a problem with your mood, you've come around to that cycle somehow.
Yeah, I will definitely comment on there. Thank you for posting that. It's that modern day problem that is, you know, I mean, you don't have to go very far to realize that the incidence of mental health has increased substantially even before COVID. COVID, it is
Oh, yeah.
even more, but the amount of people being diagnosed with mental health issues has been huge and on the rise for so long. You know, we had what in the 50s, the early 60s, you started with the TV dinners, but the amount of population growing, the amount of over farming, everything, it's just been the stress, the lack of the food, not getting the nutrition, mental health goes up, and then the medications come
Yep.
in, and then things get worse, and then we're just sitting there. So we have a solution, and I am so glad because I like solutions.
I'm all about the solution too. So good. Yeah, it's become an epidemic, isn't it? It is a problem across the board. I don't think I know of a household anywhere that isn't affected.
No.
Everyone knows someone.
I think so. I think so too. Well, Autumn, I thank you so much um, for not giving up and for trusting your daddy way back when he wanted to feed you all these pills, and for you, the consistency that you've had and that you've shared your story, because a lot of people, they don't want to talk about it. It's over, it's done. Let's just put that in the past. But your story is so powerful. I'm so thankful for it, because I thought that my family was the only one who was going through this. And I realized that there's lots and lots of families that are going through similar situations that have moods and depression and things that are happening, and that it's not the end of the world, that there's a solution, and that it's a very easy one too, and it's affordable. I like that too, that Renova decided to make this affordable. And when Autumn, I'll never forget that day, and I'll leave it with this, that when I asked you, well, is there like a business side to this? If you can just for giggles, tell me about it. And you didn't come up with this flashy answer about, yeah, and you went into this network marketing spiel, which there's nothing wrong if somebody wants to do that. But you just said, no, yeah, there is, but I just focus on the product. My husband can tell you more about the business. I'm so glad that he did. Um, but I'm very glad that you didn't, and that you just said, we just make it affordable for families. And that was the answer I was looking for, because in all sincerity, I was a little bit tired of the smoke and mirrors and the just, I get tired of talk, all the talk and no
Yeah.
action. Just show me, what's the Jerry Maguire say? Show me the money. I say, just show me the results. And if my brain, after taking a supplement for 2 years, that was supposed to be a pretty darn good supplement, and then taking this and feeling the difference in 20 minutes, that's powerful.
It is powerful. Now, this has never been about the money, but I'm just grateful that there are people who are willing to share and willing to work hard and help as many people as they can, and who can be compensated so they can spend their time doing this and not doing something else. I think that's great.
Exactly.
And I think it's fair.
Yep, I think so too. And being able to turn around and say, wow, you know what? I can help somebody else. And there may be, a mom who really has its son struggling like we did. And she's trying to figure out how to buy groceries tomorrow. And
Yeah.
so, if I can donate my free bag of sticks to her, or some of the money that I've earned, to give her a bag of sticks and help her get back on her feet to where she can even focus to be able to help her family, then it's just a win-win. So that's my
Yeah,
story,
it
and I'm
really is.
sticking to it.
I love that. Oh, Jessica, I love working with you so much. You're just really good. You're a good person. And I know that you just have your heart in the right place. You help a lot of people. So thank you for everything you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Adam. And I want to thank my friends too, because you could be like watching TV or going to sleep or going down to the dome for a cuppa or something. We got two Aussies, two San Diegos, Idaho. Anyway, yes, we could be doing other things, but I love you guys. And I want us to be able to be healthy and have a nice, clean, sound mind where we have a little pep in our step, and we might even see ourselves going around the house singing a little tune, and then you go, wow, I feel really good today. So I've been doing that. Maybe I'm a little weird
That's
though.
awesome. Well, 'tis the season for singing little tunes in the house. So
We got lots to be, yes, 'tis the season. But I'm not celebrating that season till after this season of Thanksgiving. And I'm thankful for Renova. I'm thankful for you and Dana, Autumn, and I'm thankful for all my friends on here. So much to be thankful for. We are going to, I know it's Thanksgiving Eve, but I think we're still going to be meeting at 5 p.m. Pacific, which is Australia. I'll still be sleeping, but 5 p.m. Pacific, we're going to meet again, and then 8 p.m. Pacific, where Dana, Stringham, Autumn's husband, is going to be sharing more of kind of how Renova came about on Wednesday night. So anyway, you guys have a great day down under, and have a good night's sleep. Autumn, Misty, and Maribel, have a good night, and
good to
we'll
see
see
you
you
all.
later.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Autumn.
Good
Thanks,
to see you, Colette.
Colette.
Bye, Misty.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Shirley. Bye,
Bye,
Maribel.
Jessica, good night. Thank you, Jessica, Adam.
Thanks, Maribel.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jessica.
guys.